Minor variations on a warm and humid weather regime scheme. I'm meteorologist Don Paul. Welcome to my podcast, Don Paul's Bits o' Blather on weather and climate. And this time around, weather persistence for the eastern Great Lakes. We are quite muggier, as they say in gay Paris, quite mugua on this Friday afternoon. Temperatures heading toward the upper 80s. Dew points in the semi steamy mid and upper 60s. Not oppressive, but when you combine that with the absence of any real breeze, it feels very close out there. So I would recommend that you take it easy. And if you can afford to and have the central AC, it's worth keeping on. Now, as we head toward the evening and into the evening, not a very potent system with a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere and an area of low pressure are going to set off some thinly scattered showers and thunderstorms as early as late this afternoon and more likely during the evening hours. Coverage will be very uneven, so not everyone gets one, but there is enough water vapor for isolated excess rainfall with some of these storms and a marginal 5% risk of isolated severe thunderstorms. Again, the definition of severe thunderstorm means either peak wind gusts reaching or exceeding 58 miles an hour. That's the threshold at which more significant property damage can develop, or hail in excess of an inch in diameter. In this particular case, we don't think hail is going to be an issue. So, a low risk of isolated severe thunderstorms this evening. I wouldn't cancel plans, but keep an eye on the western horizon. That goes for you boaters too. On Saturday, still rather humid, a little better breeze developing with partly sunny skies and maybe a few showers or thunderstorms. If they occur, they're more likely in the morning. They again would be thinly scattered, so I wouldn't cancel any plans. No indications of a washout. Sunday, the dew points drop just a little bit. I'm not even sure you're going to notice the difference, but there will be a little bit of a better breeze. Sunday, partly sunny, temperatures not quite as warm. The upper 80s today, the mid 80s on Saturday, and the low 80s on Sunday. Subtle differences, but Monday we're back up to the upper 80s with some pretty hot high pressure over us. And in the meantime, Hurricane Beryl is going to be moving towards South Texas. It moved onto the Yucatan Peninsula early on Friday as a pretty strong Category 2 hurricane. It's going to do some real damage and cause some flooding, and then re-intensify after weakening over the Yucatan Peninsula back to at least Category 1 strength in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, drifting now more likely toward the Texas Gulf coastline. Earlier track forecasts early in the week thought a Mexican or Brownsville landfall would be more likely, but now the track forecasts are recurving it a little bit more toward the north. But the key element to this hurricane is that it will be slowing down. And even when a hurricane weakens, once it makes landfall, it can produce devastating flash flooding because of the stalled motion. And that is a real possibility for parts of eastern Texas. That might again include Houston, which had some of the heaviest rain ever observed in 2017 with decaying Hurricane Harvey. Then it's going to crawl into southern Arkansas, crawl toward Tennessee, producing torrential downpours all the way up into Kentucky. Some of the water vapor from this slowly decaying system may eventually reach western New York, not as a tropical storm system, but just enhancing some scattered showers and thunderstorms that would otherwise be around in advance of weak cold fronts. No cold air behind any of those fronts, though. We may experience temperatures on Tuesday again in the upper 80s down to the low 80s on Wednesday, when there will again be a chance of some showers and thunderstorms here and there and some localized downpours. And then it looks like by late next week, temperatures will be moving back up toward the mid 80s. So there is no sharp cooling in sight. There will be these subtle variations I made mention of. And while no one especially needs rain right now, especially after last Saturday's pretty widespread heavier rainfall, some areas are going to be getting kind of parched, not drought, I'm not talking about that. So you may want to keep those sprinklers going, especially you gardeners. Farmers know what they need to do in the way of any irrigation. They don't need my advice. But you gardeners, with this kind of warmth and not much wind, you're going to want to keep your plants hydrated. In the meantime, in the farther out range, getting toward mid July, uh, the likelihood of some heat rebuilding in the Great Lakes, getting us back up to the upper 80s appears likely. Too early to put a number on that, but the kind of upper air pattern we're looking at is, as usually the case, impossible to talk about precipitation that far in advance. I'm talking about 16th, 17th, 18th of the month, just too far out. But don't count on any sharp cooling. So it looks like the earlier outlooks we and also the Climate Prediction Center had been giving you about a warmer than average July are going to hold true. And that may sound to some of you, what's the big deal about warmer than average July? It's always warm in July. Well, warmer than average means warmer than it typically is in July, which for some people will be quite uncomfortable. Hot. For me, verbally, the threshold of hot begins around 90 in Buffalo, but you may feel otherwise. And so that's the overall picture. And we'll have to keep an eye on that tropical moisture, not so much for Western New York, but there could be some widespread flooding problems developing from Beryl once it makes landfall into Texas and then slows to a crawl, which is a kind of pattern, this stalling, which has become more frequent during the accelerated global warming, where the atmosphere tends to get blockier more often, in which there's slower forward motion of weather systems. So Beryl started out as a very fast moving tropical system. And now, as it moves toward Texas, it is going to be in the next few days slowing to a crawl. That is a point of concern. So is the length of this podcast episode. I shall end it here. Please share, please follow. Thanks for listening this far.